Now it's time for Knuckles, and it debuted April 27th, 2024. It's a mini-series with only 6 episodes. The Warrior, Don't Say I Wasn't There For You, The Shabbat Dinner, The Flames of Disaster, Reno Baby, and What Happens in Reno Stays in Reno. All 6 episodes were released on the same day, on April 26th and 27th, depending on the time zone, on Paramount+. The first one, directed by Jeff Fowler himself, started out okay. You saw an amazing obstacle course that Knuckles made that was so game-inspired, it was awesome. Then we have this moment of our hog Sonic talking about how he matured on this planet. Seeing if he can reason with Knuckles after he basically went wild on repairmen after they destroyed the wall in the past film. How they could afford all this property damage is beyond me. Then Knuckles turns the house into what could be described as Game of Thrones. Then he gets grounded and sent to his room. Sonic talks to him a little bit more. He leaves. Then Knuckles seeks the help of his ancestors. Enter Pacha Comic from Sonic Adventure 1, voiced by Christopher Lloyd. This is when the series starts getting silly. Pacha Comic, with no sense of irony, asks Knuckles to help the random Wade Whipple win a bowling tournament. As if Pacha Comic couldn't have created a more poetic or interesting reason of why he trained Wade. And that's trains in quotes, by the way. And again, this is when Knuckles is grounded for some ungodly reason, or an unancestrally reason. He is able to leave the house and join Wade at the bowling tournament. In my opinion, the smarter idea would have made him go to his room to think about what he did. But no! Pretzel Lady grounded him. So Knuckles is not going to learn responsibility? Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that Wade was part of a team that had a bounty hunter, and he was beaten by a Girl Scout. Making things worse, so he has to trade in his freaking uniform. Now, here's what I don't get. When Donut Lord is not working as a policeman, and Wade is supposed to be in charge of it all, who's policing the town? So he's at the bowling alley, and that's where he learns that Wade was abandoned by his father at a TJ Maxx, a very specific department store chain that was started in 1976. Keep in mind that this dude is 42 in real life. Adam Pally was born in 1982. Yet the word is out how old he is in the series. At this very same point, we have the introduction of the Team Rocket, rest in peace, Rachel Lillis, of course, type individuals from Gun, who send a man to his doom to the Mushroom Planet. They get their first mission, which is apprehending Knuckles, who is currently at the bowling alley, and a battle ensues. So what's really funny is that one of the 2 individuals that left Gun was actually someone who wrote the song for Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Kid Cudi. His character name is Mason, like the jar. So is it some sort of meta humor that he's cast in this miniseries? Or was it an agreement after he recorded Stars in the Sky that he would be part of this miniseries via contract? My guess is that he was one big meta joke, because he uses the same lines that Knuckles did.
Do I look like I need your power?
In Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So then, who include him what Knuckles said to Sonic. Is Gun doing some sort of Patriot Act that we don't know about? Where no one in this universe has any sort of privacy? Ugh. That's a scary thought. But then again, that would be very on brand for Gun because of what they did in the games. I mean, it makes perfect sense for Willoughby, or Ellie Taylor, to leave Gun after nefarious things that they've done. But that wasn't what she said was the reason she left, so... And her name is the same as an Archie character that just so happens to be voiced by my grandfather in Archie from the original cartoon. Weird coincidence. So, Mason and Willoughby just so happen to thwart Knuckles and take him through a portal, where in the last scene, we see him in a blue box. Thus, we start the episode of Don't Ever Say I Wasn't There For You, directed by Ged Wright, who had never directed anything before this. He was merely a digital artist and visual effects supervisor. And it just so happens that this particular episode had the most visual effects shots in the entire freaking series. That was fueled by delusions of grandeur. As Wade happened to have acquired the mitts that Mason had in the last episode. So somehow he gained the information of where Knuckles was being held and thought of a plan to rescue him. And he thinks that all the stuff he gets at a freaking gas station store can save Knuckles. Need I remind you, this is the same dude that failed to deal with Agent Stone in the last movie. I mean, he got him in a chair to interrogate him, but that's it. Then Robotnik completely reversed the situation. How in the world did this guy get a job as a police officer? He even sucks at taking phone calls. Yeah, this guy needs training. Bad. So, to no surprise, Wade's plan literally goes up in smoke. Even in a relatively funny scene, his car explodes. So there goes the idea of having a getaway. So even with the one power mitt he had from the last episode, he is completely out of his league. Mason completely has him under his thumb. Until, by sheer coincidence, Wade gets the upper hand and defeats Mason, knocking him out. So Knuckles is freed, and Wade rides him, learning he can hover, not fly, making a visual that's a very clear nod to E.T. So, to celebrate, Wade gets food for Knuckles. But they never eat it! Do humans even eat in this series? Even Tom leaves his freaking food on the lid of his truck and drives off! This was after the Quicksilver-inspired bar fight from the first movie. So back to this ridiculous miniseries. Somehow Wade has got himself another vehicle, it's probably a rental, and finds out that he's a fugitive from the law. So what does he do? He thinks, hey, let's go to a place that no one will ever find me. My house! His childhood home. Wade, wouldn't that be the first place they'd think of after your first house in Green Hills? So then they find themselves at the house of the Whipples. Stockard Rizzo Channing opens the door, playing his mother, and has a feint that is out of continuity. Enter the most infamous episode of the entire series, The Shabbat Dinner, directed by Brandon Trost, the cinematographer for the ill-fated Coyote vs. Acme, who also worked on The Interview and The Disaster Artist. Yeah, he worked on the movie connected to the Sony hack. Now that was a doozy of an instance. And all I can say is good riddance to Amy Pascal and fire David Zaslav. As for Brandon Trost, he does have directorial credits to his name, and those are the FP and An American Pickle, and that's it, which were both middle-of-the-road films, critically. So there they are at the Boise, Idaho home of the Whipples, and it's the time of Shabbat, the day of rest. The Whipples are Jews, having 3 meals. The first on Friday night, the second on Saturday day, and the third late on Saturday afternoon. The Friday night meal begins with a song, welcoming the angels. Then the song follows with Kiddush, the Jewish practice of sanctifying the Sabbath over a cup of wine or grape juice. Episode 11 of Can't Be Juiced. Then they wash their hands and then lift challah breads, a sweet and leavened braided bread. If you added any more sugar, it would be turning into a dessert. They recite the blessing hamotzi. The challah is then sliced, dipped into salt, and then eaten. Then the meal continues with festive foods, often chicken, with singing, and then sharing thoughts of the Torah. If they were Ashkenazi Jews that came from Rome and spoke Yiddish, they would have gefilte fish at the start of the meal.
Gefilte fish! I'm not eating gefilte fish for the rest of this trip!
Now, what's gefilte fish? Well, it's a dish made of ground deboned fish, commonly carp, whitefish, pike, and Nile perch. Also, during the Friday night meal, they would have chicken soup. During the actual Shabbat meal, which is on Saturday, they would have all heated meals. But in the morning, it traditionally begins with Kiddush and Hamotzi onto Halat. With that out of the way, we can now set the scene. So the Whipple family is a family of 3. Mom, Wade, and his sister. For most Sonic fans, she is the biggest issue. Meet Wanda Whipple, the cause of Wade's insecurity.
She is the worst!
Played by Edie Patterson, and she is a fully grown woman who acts like a child. And what's worse is that she is a FBI agent and loves to rub Wade's face in that fact.
Oh, shut up, woman.
I blame the writer of Brian Schachter, because somehow one of the writers of the acclaimed Green Eggs and Ham can't write a good family dynamic. Why? It's because for the longest time, he was a writing assistant, a staff writer, meaning he can't write by himself worth beans. So we have a subpar director with a mediocre writer. Sounds about right. So that means Knuckles will be joining the Shabbat dinner. Coincidentally, one of the drinks at the table is grape juice. Knuckles loves grapes. Was that an informed decision by the writers? I have no idea. Because curiously, before this Shabbat dinner, Knuckles didn't see the value of family. And honestly, it would be hard to do that with a family that has legendary, horrible Shabbat dinners for every year of their lives. It's because of 2 reasons. 1, Wanda is always the instigator. And 2, there's no dad. Dad ran off to have a bowling career and went by the name of Pistol Pete. Pistol Pete! Pistol Pete! Paramount, I know you have a storied history with Disney, but you didn't have to use the name! And the sad thing is, the reason why Wade is on this mission to do a bowling tournament is to get his dad back in his life.
You're unbearably naive.
So at this dinner, we have Wade with weird delusions about his dad. We have Wanda instigating things about thinking his job is inferior to hers. And they have Mom schmoozing with Knuckles and drawing parallels of the death of Knuckles' tribe with the issues that happened to the Jews.
But
And you're not allowed to forget that this show was released at the time when Jews and the Palestinians were at each other's throats. I can understand why one side is being defended, but I don't understand the other. Why people are defending the people of Palestine when they weren't born there makes no sense to me. People severely need to look into history. So naturally, the dinner goes completely awry. And then we have Wade getting a kitchen utensil, a fork, stabbed in his arm. Clearly, Wanda went way too far, because that girl has a severe superiority complex. Wade just wants to sound impressive when he isn't, and Wanda just makes it worse. For the first time, I actually agreed with Wade when he said his sister sucks. So he goes to his room, that hasn't changed a bit, pulls out the fork, and rests. Then Knuckles joins him after adding a plethora of new foods to his favorite foods list. They talk about the notion of the jam. Knuckles and Mom have a discussion about traditions within the family, sharing a piece of key lime pie. Then a noise erupts downstairs. They had found the Whipple home, as a bunch of bounty hunters were on his tail. Wade tries fighting a bounty hunter and fails miserably, so Knuckles has to naturally intervene and wins, smashing him through the wall. Wanda also tries fighting a bounty hunter and fails. She's so full of it. Once again, Knuckles has to take over. Then we have the best scene in the entire episode, the fight with Mom against the goons in the kitchen, playing against the song Hava Nagila. All that to get to the Shabbat candles. And here we are at episode 4. The one episode that either you love it or you hate it. We have arrived at episode 4, The Flames of Disaster. Directed by Jorma Taccone and written by James Matajeski. It is a new day, and Wade is enjoying the morning air. That is until a bounty hunter that he knows gets a hold of his legs and drags him down the road. Knuckles is there, looking at him while drinking scalding hot coffee, thinking that the hands-off approach is the way to train him. So that opening of the entire show was a lie. He doesn't actually train him, he lets nature take its course. So Wade is put into an electrified cage, and Wade tries to get himself out, but hurts himself in the process. So he loses consciousness and goes to the great battleground in the sky that takes the form of a bowling alley. And there's Pachacamic at the counter. So as a explicitly cost-covering move, they teach Wade using an aesthetic inspired and made by Lonely Island. The director of this episode had voices in both Spider-Verse movies, worked on Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, was in both Lego movies, and worked on the song Everything is Awesome. You would think with all those fun credits that this episode would be cool? Not in my opinion, because as we've established, Knuckles isn't actually doing the training, isn't actually teaching him anything. And on top of that, Knuckles hasn't learned anything, except for mundane things about family. I'm not sure what Paramount Television was thinking when they made a show called Knuckles, where Knuckles doesn't learn to be a better fighter. This entire show is mostly a journey for Wade Whipple that frankly needed a more compelling narrative. Wade is given the costume of Knuckles and has to basically relive his life as a rock opera, which you really can't take seriously. The whole thing would have been better if they actually made real flashbacks. But they couldn't afford that, could they? So this whole sequence leads to him learning that being a warrior is from the heart, which results in Wade doing something completely superhuman and jumping out of the roof of the cage, smashing right through it. Where the heck did that come from? They really wrote themselves into a corner, didn't they? So after escaping the cage, he goes against his bounty hunter and proposes a duel with jousting, with bikes. He beats him and forces him to take his entire ensemble off, completely humiliating him, leaving him in his underwear, which is how Wade gets the hat. Not Knuckles, Wade. They pulled a Deus Ex Machina for Knuckles to get a hat. And so Knuckles and the Whipple family go to Reno. Thus we start the 5th episode, Reno Baby, directed by Carol Banker. And to our dismay, it is also written by Brian Schachter. Gratefully, Carol Banker is a very seasoned director, having credits that include The X-Files, The Vampire Diaries, Glee, NYPD Blue, and The Tick, as well as Doom Patrol. Though for Titans, she has 7 episodes to her name. For the other shows, they are only about 1 through 3 episodes each. So she's very familiar with jumping projects. And for this show, it's no different, because she directs the last 2 episodes. She seems like, to me, a Jill of all trades, because she has directed genres of multiple kinds, including court shows, fantasy, superhero, action, science fiction, and comedy. Even a little bit of horror. And of course, musical, specifically jukebox musical. So essentially, what is this episode about? Well, it's about Wade reconciling with his dad, who happens to be played by Cary Elwes, who is known for Princess Bride, Robin Hood Men in Tights, and Liar Liar with Jim Carrey. You gotta love those connections. So Wade thinks, with the help of Knuckles, that he can reason with his dad, confronting him face to face. But of course, because of Knuckles and his social ineptitude, it doesn't go smoothly, so Wade has to go it alone. We are obviously convinced that Wade got to him, and they get very chummy. Around the same time, Mason and Willoughby meet their boss face to face for the first time. And we find out his name is simply the Buyer. And apparently he worked for Robotnik. But then Sonic had that fight with Robotnik, and then he was sent to the Mushroom Planet, where Gunn got involved, where Gunn decided to basically erase all traces of Robotnik from the world, including him. So then why is he going against Knuckles when Sonic was the reason for his attempted assassination? Apparently it was out of mutual respect, and because he was collecting the quills from Knuckles to use for his inventions.
The whole thing is highly suspect.
Because they're plagiarizing their own freaking franchise. They can't think of any original ideas. Also, this is when we learn why Willoughby left Gunn. It's because she was an extraterrestrial eradicator, and then Gunn decided to stop killing them and help them instead, because they put her into a desk job that she hated. Yet she had great respect for Ivo Robotnik. Go figure. So the buyer gives them one last chance to go against Knuckles. Back in Reno, Wade somehow pulls out all the stops, beating everyone in the tournament except his father. Again, where did this Wade come from? This is the same dude that was beaten by Girl Scout Susie. So after the first round, Wade and his father celebrate in his penthouse. And this is after his mother warned him about the possibility of him pulling a 180. And no, the guy is unbearably naive as usual. And while Knuckles is in the dressing room by himself, Wade finds out that, yeah, of course, his father double-crosses him, with Mason and Willoughby in the room with him, with his mother and his sister tied to chairs used as blackmail. So yeah, his mother was right. The dude is a scumbag through and through. Can I say how much I hate deadbeats of both male and female persuasions? And that includes you, Vanellope! Which leads to the final episode, What Happens in Reno Stays in Reno. Once again directed by Carol Banker, whereas this one was written by John Whittington. He was one of the screenwriters for the Lego Batman movie, and wrote 5 episodes of The Green Eggs and Ham Show. Not to mention he's a screenwriter on both Sonic 2 and 3. So here's hoping for continuity. So this was the final episode. Wade has tipped Knuckles to the situation. Knuckles defeats the agents, then kills them with 2 rings. Then Wade goes to the tournament, beats him in the finals, while Knuckles goes against the freaking robot with Buyer inside. Buyer leaves Knuckles totally unconscious, then Wade has to interfere and throw bowling balls at him. Knuckles wakes up, he takes back his power, then throws a freaking dome on top of the Buyer and he's dead. Wade shows his father what for, and then there's a high five, and thus there's the end of the show. So pros, Knuckles as a character is written perfectly, and the action scenes are all awesome. Cons, character development is minimal. Wanda Whipple is an annoying character. Using a rock opera to avoid show don't tell was pathetic. And the whole excuse from the creators that they said they justified their writing to make it more like Happy Gilmore misses the whole point of Happy Gilmore. You need to be trained by chubs to be Happy Gilmore.
Golf's no different from hockey. Requires talent, self-discipline.
Happy Gilmore is Hero's Journey 101. Also, why did they give him training to be a better bowler when he could have been a better cop? And this show was frustrating. And to make matters worse, in order to save money, Paramount killed the company that made this show thereafter. So apparently this show was a success in viewing numbers, and yet the company is now dead. Make some sense of that. So I give Knuckles an overall 4 stars out of 5. There was fun to be had, but there was also plenty of cringe. So in summary, Castlevania Nocturne had DEI level incompetence, whereas Knuckles had general incompetence.